Hi there, folks. It's me, Big Ugly Jim, doing that thing I do. I'm gonna be having a whole bunch of fun today. First and foremost, as always, I think I'll remind you to, if you like the video, like, subscribe, do all those things that YouTube says you should do. Thanks, YouTube. And I now have a Patreon, so if you want to support me, you can through the magic of patronizing me. Patronize me, Daddy. Because I think that's what the world needs. An old curmudgeonly person in media getting paid to just bitch and moan about things. Where have I seen that before? Oh, I'm funny. So yeah, I'm here today. I'm going to be talking about Jason Kenney, and specifically, I wanted to talk to conservatives. I don't imagine many conservatives will see this video. I happen to be a leftist and a progressive, and I think most of the people who follow me are leftists and progressives, and it's a huge number. It's all the way up to 45 subscribers. You could be 46. The reality is I have a very small voice in a giant ocean of media, so I don't really anticipate that Jason Kennedy's going to hear about this one day, or that the great mass of conservative people will even know about it. I'm live streaming. I will then be taking this offline and editing it for getting rid of all the times I say or so, because I do that a lot. Don't worry, my progressive viewers, there's lots in this video for you. I'm not trying to radicalize anyone. I don't think I have it in my power to radicalize. I'm now an old man, and I've tried in my many, many years to make people see the wisdom of doing things my way, and clearly that doesn't happen. But hopefully you will hear what I'm saying and understand why I'm saying it, and hopefully maybe it'll make you question some things. The title of the video is Why You Hate Jason Kenney. I hate him for a lot of reasons. They're not the same reasons as my conservative viewers, of which theoretically you are potentially one. So a lot of people, I think, are feeling that sense of frustration. In fact, I saw an article. I've heard sort of rumblings about this lately. The article was sent to me by my buddy from my Discord, Shiny Sparkling Underpants. Kenny's down, but is he out? It's about a new Alberta-based poll from Janet Brown, and the commentaries were some reflection. Basically, Jason Kenney's popularity is not at an all-time low, but dangerously close. So the latest Lager tracking poll saw Kenney recovered a 47% COVID performance satisfaction a couple weeks ago, but now he's back to 29%, only slightly ahead of his lowest rating in a year at 26% in early February 2021. It's a fascinating article. I will probably include the link down there in the description. Jason Kenney's got a real popularity problem right now, and that is not exclusively because of the massive swath of angry leftists and socialists living in Alberta. There's three of us. The reality is that Alberta is a very conservative province, and anytime the conservative leader has such low, staggeringly low approval rating, it bears some question as to why. A lot of people hate Jason Kenney right now, and I don't know that they know why, so I thought I'd make this video. If you are an American, just to put everything into context, Alberta is a province. Province is like a state. Jason Kenney is the premier, which would be like the government. That's just so we're all speaking the same speak. And yes, I'm wearing a tank top today, Beercore tank top. It's a balmy 17 degrees Celsius, which I believe in American is like 400 or something, 400 US. I don't know. It's a goodly chunk of warm outside, and that's not to be expected this time of year, so I'm celebrating it. I'm also wearing shorts, but you can't see that because you don't need to stare at my legs, perv. We are in Alberta. Alberta has almost exclusively been a conservative hotbed forever. Our economy is very heavily tied to oil and gas, specifically oil and gas. Like every time we try and have other things, we have oil and gas, which is great for me. I work in the oil and gas sector. Yay! But probably not so good for like the planet or people who want to have jobs that are not in oil and gas. It's a very clear-cut place. As long as I have been alive, with one exception, we have had conservative leadership at the provincial level. The one exception was the previous election. We had Rachel Notley and the NDP, not wildly progressive, but definitely a progressive agenda, and it was a vote kind of like what we may be looking at right now, with people who are upset with the leadership of the UCP or the Conservative Party and saying, I'm voting something else. In Alberta, it was always either Liberal or PC. Our Liberal Party has been decimated and has done nothing for a very long time. There's some great people in that party, but it's a non-starter. Alberta, like I said, is very conservative, very libertarian sort of vibe. A lot of people who work in industries, a lot of tradespeople work and live in Alberta, and tradespeople in the oil and gas field, often paid in good times at least a lot better than they would receive in other provinces. We have a huge amount of people who've moved here from other provinces for the economic prosperity of days gone by. Obviously, things aren't quite so prosperous right now. So the NDP came in, and literally this was stunning to me. Like, I voted for the NDP, but I did not hold out any hopes that they would win. And then they won, and I was like, holy crap. And they did things like they started moving us towards alternative energy, diversifying our economy so that we weren't reliant on oil and gas, because that is a temporary solution to a long-term problem. This is one of the things Alberta's known for, is clinging tight to literally the corpse of the energy industry and saying, if we just hold out, it'll be better. And it never is, it never is, it never is. The NDP came in and they were strong on the idea of diversification. They were strong on putting money back into social services, which all of our social services have been sort of progressively gutted by successive conservative governments, as is their conservative way. So there was a lot of rebuilding to do. And unfortunately, Rachel was not reelected. I'm hopeful that in the next election, maybe that'll be different. And these polls certainly tell me that it could be. I've heard rumblings that his own party is angry at him, that several of them wrote letters about our coronavirus, or make me wear a mask to him. And I've also heard that there's talk of, we should just do another election or do a leadership review, or who knows. Jason Kenney is in some trouble. Let's take a look at his campaign. So I'm going to jump back here. This is from the CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. And it's the actual announcement from when he said, I'm going to run, and this is what our party platform is going to be. So a lot of it is very, very tried and true Alberta conservative stuff. The key points. So this first point, no rail cars, super lab. So Rachel Notley, there was this thing called the Trans Mountain Expansion Project. And Trans Mountain was owned by Kinder Morgan. Kinder Morgan was not having any success getting it approved by the National Energy Board. To do this, it's basically twinning their existing pipeline. And so people were feisty about it. The future of that project was looking very bleak. Kinder Morgan was actually talking about selling it off or just abandoning it altogether. It was just not happening. And around that time, we were dying to get Alberta's oil to Tidewater. That's one of the biggest problems with being Alberta, is we don't have an ocean. The Trans Mountain Pipeline was supposed to make that better. Twinning that pipeline would open up a whole pile of ability to transport oil to sea so that we could ship it to other customers. Because really our only customers that are available to us are America. And America ain't a very good customer. Sorry, Americans. Rachel Notley signed this agreement leasing a bunch of rail cars basically shipping oil by rail. And then Justin Trudeau made arrangements for the federal government to buy the Trans Mountain Pipeline Company from Kinder Morgan. That project's going ahead. But in the meantime, in order to increase our output of oil to the coast, Notley had purchased leases for a bunch of rail cars. Moving oil by rail is dangerous and stupid. If we're going to rely on on oil, then we need pipelines. And we need to build pipelines properly and smartly and not piss off our indigenous hosts. But we need pipelines. Jason Kenney didn't like this. He said it was very expensive. The details here says NDP's plan to spend $3.7 billion on leasing rail cars. And yes, he in fact did get rid of the rail cars. The numbers are not awesome. Essentially, the NDP felt that we could bring in $8.8 billion in incremental revenue, and it ended up costing taxpayers $1.3 billion of public money in order to sell off these contracts. And I say sell off because I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's what happened. They sold them to private companies. So theoretically, the oil moved the same as it would have. But we didn't get any of that lucrative money. I'm not an economist. That feels like a stupid decision. But it was a big thing from his perspective on why he was going to run. The Super Lab is another one. The NDP wanted to purchase a company, Dynalife, I believe was the name of the company, who are a medical testing company mostly in Edmonton, that were basically strained to the limit. NDP came in, said, we want to buy you, and we want to take this space that we already own, and we're going to turn it into a massive central testing space where all of our tests can go, loads and loads of throughput. It'll be way better. $640 million was the price tag for construction. I'm all for that. We need to have good quality testing. And if anything, we've learned how important that is in the last few years. And instead, Jason Kenney canceled that. And it cost $12 million for us to turn that back into green space. Every time these things happen, I'm always like, why? Why would you not see it through? Like, fine, you don't like it, but come on. Anyways, it was a big ideological thing. Jason Kenney was very upset at the idea of public ownership of a testing facility. You know, let the market do it properly, which never fails. So yeah, the Super Lab got canceled. And then the question of building the economy. Jason was very big on business investment, especially in oil and gas. And in cutting, the job creation tax cut, which would drop the corporate tax rate from 12% to 8%. This is something people, I genuinely don't understand. Does cutting the tax rate actually make people come to it did in the days of Ralph Klein. I know that he made like historically low corporate taxes and a lot of companies moved to Alberta. I don't think that's a thing anymore. And if the world hadn't gone through coronavirus, I don't know that cutting our corporate tax rate would have made a difference. Investing in oil and gas is a tricky thing because oil and gas companies notoriously don't give a crap about anyone but oil and gas companies. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And then his climate plan, which is funny that they call it a climate plan. Scrap the Alberta Climate Leadership Plan. I love this quote. The United Conservatives noted in its platform that the world was grappling with the tension between needing a carbon-based energy industry and the consensus that its emissions are directly contributing to climate change. Consensus. Their strategy would see carbon emissions reduced at a lower rate than what has been promised by the NDP. Annual reduction of 43 megatons of carbon emissions without a carbon tax. They actually got rid of the carbon tax that the NDP had put in. It was going to be a $30 per ton carbon tax. And a lot of people were this was one of those strong opposition things. So it was an easy win for old JK to pull out. an important side note, he was like a wannabe authoritarian. I say wannabe because he kind of looks like the grown-up version of Spanky from The Little Rascals, but he's certainly a vicious little troll of a man. I'm gonna go back to that first article actually real quick. There's a section here that I thought was really good. Expect abuses of power to stay in power. Authoritarian strongman leaders rely on fear and terror to sustain power. Kenney's authoritarian aspirations are obvious, but while he is a scary guy, he's not personally fearsome. We have seen that he does, or that he does have the capacity to inflict harm on anyone he chooses, though, through his abuses of political power, which he's used in many ways already. So I definitely agree with that statement. Jason Kenney has, he's like a petty power wielder, not like a good, strong man. When the election was happening, he was coming across like a real Donald Trump style, Rob Ford style, like, I'm tough and I'm mean and I'm Alberta tough, god damn it. And he wasn't at all. And throughout coronavirus, he's really looked weak, spiteful and bitter, but weak. And I think that's a major part of his undoing. Authoritarians are only effective when the people are afraid. So the virus hits. Kenney became Premier of Alberta. Let's do this. We're gonna do this. Again, I'll jump here. When did Jason Kenney get elected? 2019 election. In the 2019 Alberta general election held on April 16th, 2019, Kenney won. So April 16th, 2019. Now, as a related question, when was the first worldwide case of coronavirus? When was first reported? And this was you can find information from the WHO regarding the current outbreak that was reported from Wuhan, China on the 31st of December, 2019. What was being reported wasn't, hey, there's a coronavirus. It was, this pneumonia seems weird. We need to keep an eye on this. The reason I bring that up, obviously, the timeline between April 16th and December 31st of the same year, it's not a very long timeline. That means that most of his time governing has been governing through a pandemic. I don't want to cut him any slack. He's a piece of crap, in my opinion. The first session of of legislature, which was before any of this all happened, his first session, they did all sorts of things. They repealed the carbon tax, and they punched holes in both the Employment Standards Code and the Labor Relations Code, so that there were changes to union certification. They made it so kids under 18 couldn't get, they got a $2 an hour drop in their minimum wage. And the big one that pissed a lot of people off was they made paying overtime no longer legally required. It was no longer 1.5 times, it was straight time, which a lot of people were not very pleased about. The energy war room, just a constant barrage of crap and bullshit from that UCP government. And in the beginning, we were very concerned about it. He put through a policy about protesting. So there was some protests, a different pipeline, because pipelines are a major source of concern in this province. In this case, it was the Coastal GasLink pipeline in BC, which is the next province over. There was a huge protest by the Wet'suwet'en people who were not happy with the path of the pipeline. I probably can do a whole video just talking about that, and if I did that, I would probably bring someone I know who knows a lot more about it than I do. What I know about it is we were in the wrong, and it's not, like, it's a complicated space, and it's just not okay to be like, We got agreements with people. We should be allowed to do whatever we want there. That's just not how the world is, and that everything that Coastal GasLink did there was a mistake. So no, difficult thing. So a lot of people in Alberta were protesting to raise their voices in support of the Wet'suwet'en people, and the writing on the wall about Trans Mountain Pipeline's expansion project and potential protesting and all sorts of other things. Kenney put through a law that basically made it illegal to protest near critical infrastructure. And that's a funny bit of not telling the whole truth, because what's critical infrastructure? Doesn't define it, doesn't say. It's whatever we decide is critical infrastructure. So that concept, you could say that roads are critical infrastructure. You could say that sewers are critical infrastructure. Can't protest near a sewer. I don't know where the line is, but that's exactly the problem is I don't know where that line is. And I don't trust them to follow that line. So I'm not a fan of Jason Kenney. I never have been. In my mind, he's a BLT, and the L is leprosy. Now he's stuck between a rock and a hard place. He got elected as the big, tough, authoritarian boss man. He spent his first few months in power pushing people around and making lots of noise and saying mean things about Rachel Notley and saying mean things about Justin Trudeau. And then the pandemic hits. And suddenly he's a whole different guy. He's trying really hard to appear tough with Justin Trudeau, but he comes across really weak, comes across really petulant. And I don't know the validity of this, but I've heard that he has been complaining about how Ottawa hasn't done enough. Ottawa is Canadian Parliament, the Prime Minister, which is like a president. Ottawa hasn't done enough to help us. But apparently everything that they've given us, like millions and millions and millions of dollars, Jason Kenney has just refused and has not used. Fuck that guy. Fuck him hard. We elected a strong man. We got Jason Kenney. The problem is very simple. Alberta loves conservative politics. We love to feel like we are the mavericks, the outsiders. We bitch and moan about, goddamn Quebec and Eastern Canada and all them jibber jabbers off there we're the ones out here working hard, which living in Calgary is completely hilarious because the difference between Calgary and Edmonton, the two biggest cities in Alberta, Edmonton is very blue collar. The people work hard. Edmonton, not Calgary. Calgary is a very white collar town. We're the people that survey the working hard and go, it is good. Obviously, there's loads of people who are laborers in Calgary, but a huge amount of Calgary is the business behind the business of oil and gas. And so it's funny when we act like we're rootin' tootin' cowboys, because we're rootin' tootin' cowboys with like pocket protectors and really good streaming services. So just like the Cowboys used to have. Anyways, if you look at video of Jason Kenney talking about the pandemic, he's looked stronger lately, but there have been a lot of videos where he looks sort of like, well, guys, please, like, you don't have to wear a mask, guy, but like, I'd like it. Be your best friend. He has put in lockdowns and restrictions, but generally speaking, he has tried to do as little as he can because there is a huge contingent of conservative support who believe that this virus is a lie. And if you believe that, I'm not going to try and dissuade you of that right now. You're wrong, but I'm not going to show you why you're wrong. He listens to the healthcare professionals and he goes, okay, what do you want me to do? And they go, do a lockdown. We need to get ahead of this. We need to stop. Our healthcare system is going to crash. And he's like, I don't want the healthcare system to crash because that's very, very dangerous. So I don't want that. Okay, so we have to do a lockdown. Let's do the weakest, wussiest lockdown in history. And the people still are unsatisfied. The people still feel like the Gestapo is on the street corner going, "You will get in the house," which is not what's happened. This lockdown, I can walk outside. I live near a very beautiful park where I can go for a jog without a mask on. No one has ever made it a thing that I had to go for a jog with a mask on. The mall near me has been open the whole time. Some of the stores not so much, but it's open. I can't sit in the food court. But if this is what you think Nazi Germany was like, maybe it's time to read a textbook. Because no, not even remotely. This has been such an amazingly lackluster event. It sucked. Don't get me wrong. Everything about this has sucked. But this is not 1917. We have cable. We have Netflix. We have streaming porn services. We have people who will bring you every kind of food that's ever been to your door without even like breathing on you. We've had bars open. I played a show quite a bit back. Very, very quiet show when we were standing behind shower curtains, but it worked. It was fun. That's not a Gestapo lockdown. I'm getting sidetracked. Jason Kenney has had to be more liberal. A lot of people are angry about that. But here's the point of why I wanted to make this video and what I wanted to say to you guys. Jason Kenney came in guns blazing. Hardcore conservative values, conservative, goddamn. The minute a crisis happened, he had to back down. Remember how he was going to lay off all the support workers in the hospitals and he was going to force the nurses to have a strike? Remember all that? The only reason he didn't is because it would have destroyed this whole province because of coronavirus, because it was starting to be a thing at that point. Jason Kenney has to adopt liberal perspectives, and that's what he has done. And the reason behind that is because conservatism doesn't work in the face of a pandemic. Conservatism doesn't work in the face of an earthquake. Conservatism doesn't work when the going is tough. And I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, but the truth is, if this pandemic hadn't happened, Jason Kenney would have ripped apart all our social programming without a hesitation. No problem. And we'd have gone, those of us like me would have been, what a dick. And those of us like you would have been like, yay, what a hero. All the waste is gone now. Yay. That works in times where you've got extra. But right now, we are screwed. And no matter how big, bad, tough, authoritarian, tough guy dude you are, you have to play the game. You have to look after people. The best thing Canada did was serve. And you can thank Justin Trudeau's Liberals for that. Not Justin Trudeau. That guy's a joke. But you can certainly thank the Liberal Party for putting that through. For giving not just a living wage, but a certain amount of expendable income to the people who lost their jobs. Compare that to the States, where they've gotten a total of what, $2,000, $600 and $1,400 or whatever. That's what we were getting a month on CERB. I wasn't on CERB. I've been lucky enough to be able to work the whole time. That money kept this province afloat when oil and gas couldn't, when business couldn't. We threw money at through Jason Kenney's direction. We threw money at Cenovus. How'd that go? They took that money, they merged with Husky Energy, and I think they're moving. Are they moving? I'm not sure. They're certainly laying people off. In Canada, he threw money at moving south. Threw a boatload of money for Keystone XL. Even Americans are like, wait, what? You guys thought that was going to happen? Bright Sparkling Undergarments says, but taxes? Who will pay for this free ride basic guaranteed income? Who will do all the work and lower wages? I know you're kidding. Who will pay for it? The beauty of the system is that the system ultimately pays for itself. The utility of money and the velocity of money, I think, is the term that they use for it. Again, I'm not an economist, but when you give poor people money to survive, and not just to survive, but to have a little bit of thriving, they spend that money. And they spend that money and it circulates and it builds economic momentum. And all the times it's used, it gets taxed, and all that money trickles up. That is the single most important decision that was made during this pandemic. There's no arguing that. America is teetering on the brink of extermination almost. And Canada's like, boy, that sure was a long line at the grocery store today. I'll tell you what, Mum. Thank fuck. I'm glad that we were able to take people who were completely out of left field, jobless because of this, give them money and have it actually be a financially viable answer to that problem. Who's going to pay for it? Everyone's going to pay for it by using that money. You throw money at a giant corporation that uses it to do a corporate merger and lay off 1,000 people. Turns out that's not as economically good. Throw money at another corporation to move south. Turns out not so awesome. Take some more money, throw it at TC Energy to pay for a pipeline that no one thought was going to get built. Yeah, that's not a good plan either. He has got to say, wear a mask. And the reason he's got to is because that's what has to happen right now for us to survive this. Not just survive this in terms of my health and your health, but survive this in terms of our entire province staying alive. If we don't do these things and people get sick in large numbers, it crushes the healthcare system. And when it crushes the healthcare system, that creates a domino effect that just takes everything down. It's bad to have everyone sick and dying. I know that's weird. The only person that I can think of who didn't follow that logic was Trump. 600,000 dead, maybe not the best plan. Jason Kenney is stuck. If you look at his campaign things that we talked about, rail cars, obviously kind of unrelated to the conversation. That was a decision. It was a poor financial decision, in my opinion, but doesn't relate to coronavirus. The super lab, imagine the difference in the quickness and efficacy of testing if we had a state-of-the-art massive facility fully stocked and ready for this pandemic. Instead, we had a system that was already straining under its own weight. If you'd simply put healthcare in the private sector, we'd be okay, Jeeves says, bright sparkling undergarments. I definitely agree with that. No. Health for profit, terrible idea when you're faced with a pandemic. Kenny couldn't have known this. I'm not saying, oh, Jason Kenney, you should have known. Just that his conservative policy, because that is a totally run-of-the-mill conservative policy. Privatize, privatize, privatize. The pandemic came, and it screwed us. And frankly, I think the super lab was necessary before all this happened. Oh, another one. Why not? Because I value a healthcare system based on health and care, and not a healthcare business focused on profit and less for more. 100% agree. The reality is a private healthcare system has the wrong motivating factors. The carbon tax. So yes, he got rid of the carbon tax, that $30 an hour per ton tax. But the rules, and he would have been fully aware of this, by the way, the rules said if a province doesn't have a provincial carbon tax, then the federal government will impose a tax on them. And the tax that they imposed is now $40 a ton, which is more. That worked well. This was pure optics. This was making decisions supposedly to benefit people. The fact is a carbon tax is a solid plan. A lot of people who are angry about them don't understand it. I'm not here to tell you how it works right now, and I'm certainly not an expert, but damn. Cutting corporate tax rates, well, again, you couldn't have seen the pandemic coming. the yuan crashed. The oil price dropped down. The Alberta, what is it, the West Texas crude or whatever it is that we call it when we sell it, dropped down to like minus $3 a barrel. That could have happened without coronavirus. I'm not an economist. What I know is this, and that is that hedging your bets on a single industry is a bad idea. That was another thing that was done that I didn't mention earlier, and I probably should have. He referred to all of the NDP money that was going towards alternative energy and to changes in things like how the electrical grid operated and how much of that was alternative energy. He referred to that as stimulus. And he was like, oh, let the market do it. Let the market find a way to be competitive with alternative energy, which is great conservative speak, but it's utter crap. You can't compete as a company if you're investing millions or billions in new technology over a company that's just sucking more oil out of the ground and selling it to the Americans or the Chinese. There has to be support in order to foster innovation. These are major technologies. These are major changes in the world. We can't just go, tomorrow and say, oh, you know what? Let's make oil out of hemp or something. That'd be cool. There's got to be a process of transformation, and hopefully as short as one as we can do. That's why the NDP were funding these things. Everything Jason Kenney wanted to do has been a failure. You're angry at him, and it's because at the core, if you are, maybe you're socially responsible but fiscally conservative, he's failed. He's done bad fiscal decisions. If you are a tried and true conservative, somebody who believes in conservative values and things like that, he's failed because he's had to become a liberal. He's had to acknowledge the necessity of a public healthcare system. He's had to fund that. He's had to tell you to stay home and wear a mask. And he's had to do all kinds of things to weaken his authoritarian perspective. That's the guy that you elected, an authoritarian, like a grown-up Spanky from the Little Rascals, but an authoritarian. And he's lost that authority because the world didn't play him nice. The world threw at him economic crises and massive pandemic, worldwide pandemic. He couldn't have seen that coming. He couldn't have done anything. Well, he wouldn't have done anything different. But when push comes to shove, conservative values don't mean a thing when we're dying. And that's the lesson here. Unless you are a Donald Trump who is perfectly content to watch the world burn, you have to give up those conservative ideals in times of struggle. And you have to accept that the market doesn't invisible hand itself into prosperity. Government does that. I'm an anarchist, and I'm the one telling you this. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a whole pile of interesting, cool stuff. And most importantly, I hope that you like and subscribe and keep coming back for more. And hopefully I can give you interesting things to think about. And above all, the hugest of huge thanks to my one patron, Dave Anderson, Shithead Dave. I love you, and I appreciate your support. Don't worry, my Patreon is only a few days old, so I am a loser, but I'm not as big a loser as... Anyways, thank you for watching.